Okay, it looks like it's 9 o'clock, so I think we'll go ahead and jump in and get started. Thank you for joining us this morning, and welcome to a Q&A session on multi-factor authentication and some of the impacts and tips for the Outlook email changes that everybody is sorting through and figuring out how to navigate. My name is Jacqueline Southwick. I am the Communications Manager for Central ITS. And joining me today on the panel, we have Eric Jacobs, who is our Enterprise Endpoint Manager. He'll be talking about some of those Outlook tips. We have Todd Weston, who's an Information Security Analyst with the Information Security team, who is implementing the multi-factor authentication changes. And we have Corey Oglesby, a Communication Specialist. He's going to be manning the chat. And so any questions that you have throughout the presentations, if you could put those into the chat, and Corey will respond to them if there's a link or any information that he can put into the chat. Otherwise, we'll address all of the other remaining questions after the presentations. So don't think that we're ignoring you. We'll get to them. And then finally, we have Brian Cornelius, who's a computer systems administrator, and he will be helping in the chat as well. Excuse me, as well. So a couple things about the presentation today. This is a general overview. So technical or on-call support staff who are looking for more in-depth information, we're going to be offering another session for you early next week. So you can watch for an invitation on that going out through the SysManagers listserv. If you're not a member of the SysManagers mailman listserv and would like to be, you can email me, Jacqueline Southwick, at jsouthwick@wsu.edu, and we'll help you get connected with that. Questions that are reviewed, if we don't get to your question, if we run out of time, we will be reviewing them and posting additional information on our project page at its.wsu.edu/MFA. And the KB articles, any links that Corey puts into the chat, we'll also be trying to collect all of those and put those out there, because we have the knowledge base, but anything that's specific to this conversation, we want to make sure you have as easily as possible. So with that, we'll get started. I'm going to turn it over to Todd Weston to give you a quick overview of the multi-factor authentication process.
Thank you, Jacqueline, and good morning, everybody. We just want to kind of give you a broad overview of how this looks and works. Most of you who have access to MyWSU and use it regularly are familiar with the exact process of getting your MFA factor enrolled and using it. What we'd like to tell you now is just how that will look in next week's scenario when things are all behind MFA. So we'll start with this diagram. The overarching things to remember are that the MFA is per 24 hours per session on each device. That's, well, no, I shouldn't say that. The login is per session per device. The MFA is per device. So if you look at the far left of this diagram, you'll see a computer workstation. Person logs in the morning, opens up Outlook. They will be prompted for a login and MFA challenged. Say this is Wednesday morning after the change has been put into place. Is that right? Or is it Thursday morning?
Tuesday night at 8 p.m.
Okay.
8 p.m. So Wednesday morning when you get to work.
And then subsequent to opening Outlook, we open up Zoom. We'll be challenged for login like we always have been, but no MFA because that device is now covered by the MFA token you generated with Outlook. After that, opening up Canvas will be the same operation as opening Zoom. You'll get challenged for your credentials only. And then you open up Teams and there'll be no prompt. And if you look at the purple annotation at the bottom of the screen, Office 365 is considered one application to our sign-on system and MFA system. So when you logged into Outlook, you also authenticated for Teams, SharePoint, any other of the Microsoft application suite that's part of Office 365. Let's say later in the morning you have a conference to attend because you are actually on campus and in a conference room, which is an unlikely scenario today, but a year ago, this would have been real popular. But you grab your laptop and you go to your meeting. Your first operation is to log into your VPN, and that's going to be a name and password plus MFA again, because you're now on a new device, and the MFA token associated with that Outlook login earlier is for that device only. Once you're on the VPN, you open up the Outlook web client in your browser, you open up a new tab and open up My WSU, because that's what you need to do right now. There will be no prompting at all for that My WSU session because it's in the same browser, which is the same session as your web client for Outlook. Similarly, on mobile devices, should you log in to them, the first login will be challenged for login password and MFA, and all subsequent apps that are different apps will have a login if they're in a browser session or under the umbrella of a Microsoft Office 365 login. You'll have no further prompting. They'll just launch with no interaction. This is going to start, like Jacqueline mentioned, Tuesday evening. So your first login that will probably be impacted, unless you're a night owl, will be Wednesday morning, first thing for business hours. We had some questions yesterday. The MFA token has a timestamp on it when it's created. So when you first use your MFA factor to authenticate, you have a timestamp based on that time of day, and that will last 24 hours from that time of day. It's not a calendar day, once per calendar day. It's once per 24-hour period of time. So you log in at 8 a.m., you will not be prompted on that device for MFA until 8 a.m. the next morning. And that is really the high-level overview. And the biggest change in all of this is going to be felt via our access to Outlook. And that will be a topic that I now turn time over to Eric to talk about in more detail.
Real quick before we jump over to Eric's Outlook, two things. This document that Todd just reviewed is located on the project page at the very top. So if you want to share that with your areas or with people that may be confused a little bit, this is a great visual. It helps simplify the conversation. And I had another thought and it's gone. It'll probably come back and we can answer it in the questions. But we want to make sure that you know that you have access to this. Go ahead, Eric. You're muted, Eric.
Sorry. Thank you, everybody. One of the biggest changes here, like Todd mentioned, is going to be moving to Outlook. So in this meeting, I'm just going to address some of the big questions that have come up. Sort of, can I use multiple mailboxes in the Outlook app? Yes, you can. Can I use multiple calendars? Yes, you can. A big difference you will notice here is notifications will be handled within the app itself on a mobile device instead of using settings on your mobile device. So you would manage your notifications within the app. Just an aside to this will not override the getting notifications when your token expires for MFA. So once the token expires for MFA, you will not get notifications until you sign in again, and this will not override that, but this will manage your notifications otherwise. So those are the three main things moving to Outlook. The biggest change you'll notice is probably familiarity. It really does most everything you need it to do that the native apps do. Some advantages to it, you might find it actually quite a bit easier because it integrates with Office 365. It also has a focused inbox if you want it to keep your important emails top of mind, and then the rest are in a separate other box that you can look at later on. It has its own integrated calendar, which makes getting to the calendar much easier. And it's cross-platform, so you can use it on iOS, you can use it on Mac, you can use it on Android. So you'll have pretty close to the same experience on each of those apps. Now, if you don't want to download an app to your device, then the web app would be the way to go. And you can use it at email.wsu.edu, and you can use the web app. So those are the main advantages to it. If you want help installing these or need help installing these or updating these, I would suggest you reach out to your local IT. They may have some sort of way they're going to push software to you or want it installed, that kind of thing. So if you need help with any of that kind of thing, I would reach out to your IT department first. And other than that, I'll give it back to Jacqueline.
Thanks, Eric. The one thing that I was thinking of with Todd's visual about the MFA and his references to the token starting, and a lot of people having that hit with the first login on Wednesday morning, something to think about as you are authenticating in is what your workday or study day looks like and when it's best to authenticate in, so you're not in the middle of something in the middle of the day. Think of a strategic time to authenticate in, because you cannot authenticate ahead of that expiring. So without assistance, you can with assistance, but in order to keep the flow of your day going and not be disrupted by your authentication expiring, you want to think about what time of day is best, whether it's lunchtime, whether it's the end of your business day, or if you want to jump in and start it in the mornings. So just something to think about as you're transitioning to have this be a part of your everyday life. And then we have a few other tips that we've gone through in communications and different resources we've been putting out, but I thought this is a good time to go over them one more time for you. Outlook is the only supported email application for WSU going forward, not Mac Mail, not any of the other Thunderbird, any of those Gmail accounts, that type of thing that you're accustomed to. Outlook is the supported application for WSU. All Office 365 applications will require MFA, Teams, Word, Excel, any of those that you're accessing through the Office 365 platform, they will require multi-factor authentication to be able to get into them. And again, authentication lasts 24 hours on the same device. If you change to a different device, going between your laptop and your tablet, you will need to re-authenticate. If you close down that device, you will need to re-authenticate. Is that correct, Todd? Am I speaking correctly about that? If you turn off your device and come back in?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. So
I think you can close all your applications, reboot, and still have the MFA token for that device present.
okay, great. So when you are not authenticated, this is a really important piece of information. Your messages through Teams, your emails, and other notifications will not be sent. So if your authentication expires and you like to keep those going, you may have your phone or your device handy and just keep that authentication refreshed once it expires so that those don't stop.
Jacqueline, can I interject just a clarification on that statement?
Sure.
Those messages will be sent to your mailbox. Your client access to see them will be impacted. So they'll be waiting for you. It's not going to reject mail from the back end.
They'll be there. They just will be visible later. Octopush is the most expedient authentication tool that we have found, and it's tied to the OctaVerify. We have a great little simple video on the MFA information page on our website on how to use it. We definitely are encouraging people to go that direction. And again, just like when we talked about activating Okta last December and getting everything started, we strongly encourage people to set up at least 2 factors that point to different devices or phones as a recommendation. If you have multiple factors set up, but they all point to one device and that device is not available, you're not able to authenticate in. And so if that's the case, then you can go to Crimson Service Desk and they can help you with resetting and getting you access. But to maintain self-service options for changing, say your phone breaks, and you have that multi-factor authentication that also points to another device that you have, then you have that backup and you can take care of it and not be hindered by, say it's after hours or on a weekend when Crimson Service Desk is not available. If you haven't touched MFA since you set it up when we rolled it out for my WSU and you're just thinking, I don't even remember what it looks like, a great option for you is visiting mfa.it.wsu.edu. It's a testing site and you can go in and play with it and refresh on what to expect starting next Tuesday night. And as always, you can manage your MFA preferences at account.wsu.edu. That's also where you'll update your password every 6 months, which is not going away. So we want to make sure that you're familiar with where that is. And you can go there anytime and review what authentication resources you have chosen, and you can change them and take care of any of those needs that you have. So we're going to go to questions now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we'll jump out and take questions along the way. So let's go to chat. Looks like we have quite a few questions, which is great. All right, let's see. There's a question about 24 hours is too short for me. I had a student email me once in the evenings. And so addressing the 24-hour limit, there was a lot of evaluation as multi-factor authentication has been rolled out. And as somebody on the project team said, we didn't choose that time in a vacuum. So there are universities that require multi-factor authentication every single time you log in. And then there are others who have a much longer time frame, which is far less secure. So WSU looked at all the factors and the security needs and tried to find a time frame that accommodates the life of university students, faculty, and staff more effectively and supports you. So at this time, the 24 hours is the time frame that everyone has for their authentication needs. Todd, is there anything you would want to add to that?
To address Billy's question specifically, we will be having a forum next week to talk to system managers and other people who are on call, and there will be probably some concession for allowing longer terms for those people, but that's still under discussion.
Thank you, Todd. The next question, is there a way to see when your MFA token is going to expire on each device if you don't remember when you initially authenticated?
Unfortunately not. I'm working on some self-service tools right now to see if we can enable that functionality.
And are users going to receive a notification when the token expires on mobile devices?
If they have an active application that's trying to reconnect after the token expires, it will be prompting them for a password. So that is effectively the notification that has expired, but there's no proactive your token has expired message that will be generated.
Okay, thank you, Todd. If we opt out of the focused inbox, Eric, will we still have the availability to search for related emails?
Yes, you will. Yep. You can switch to a view of all or unread or whatever you want. The focused inbox is just one of the features that helps you keep it separate.
Thank you. Okay, we have a couple.
Just to add to that, we also have FAQs and tutorials posted about how to use notifications and how to add mail and calendar all to Outlook posted as well.
Great. Next questions. MFA is used for online classes. Is MFA an app and how do I get it? If I do not have an Outlook account, do I need to create one? maybe start with Todd. Is
Sure.
MFA being used for online classes?
Both Blackboard and Canvas will be enforcing MFA. I am working with the owners of those applications at WSU to make sure that we have a full understanding of how those applications handle MFA, specifically token expiration, so that we don't get students and faculty that are kicked out of courses if their MFA expired during a session. That looks promising, by the way. It looks as though most applications will honor the session token at the beginning of the session and not kick you out until you're done. MFA can be an app on your phone if you use either Google Authenticator or Okta Verify. Otherwise, it is typically a PIN number generated by a text, phone call, or a USB device that has a certificate on it.
And Eric, if they do not have an Outlook account, do they need to create one?
They do not. They should already have one. They would just need to log into email.wsu.edu or speak to their local IT to see if they can, or how to get it installed.
Great, thank you. Next question. I'm a faculty in the College of Nursing, also an employee of Providence. I log into both systems working remotely. I've gotten into technology trouble with different versions of Office 365. When I tried to follow the instructions for WSU MFA, I ran into trouble. Is it possible for someone to remote in and help me at some point? I think the answer to that is we have Crimson Service Desk staff who are available Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. And that is a large focus for them right now, is assisting users with this preparation and migration to some of these resources. So you can call them at 509-335-4357, or you can email them crimsonservicedesk@wsu.edu, or you can visit the knowledge base if you just want to search for self-service resources, and that would be at crimsonservicedesk.wsu.edu. Next question we have, has this change been presented to student government or upper administration? These groups may have feedback on the major change to workflow. Great question. So we have the executive administration at WSU has been kept apprised of it throughout the entire process and is aware, and some of the feedback that we've received is that they expected actually a tighter authentication window. So 24 hours was more time than they had even expected to be able to enjoy. Student government, we haven't specifically presented to student government. We have communicated across a number of different student organizations. We've met with them. We've communicated via email and other resources, but we're always looking to communicate and get feedback from student perspective with every change. So we'll continue to do that as we move forward into the fall semester. Okay, next question. How do we change the time of day if we have to go to work Wednesday morning? Won't it be every morning then? So talking about the time on the authentication token, Todd?
Yep. If you need to adjust when your MFA token gets set and expires, during business hours, contact Crimson Service Desk and ask them to clear your active session token. That'll force you to re-authenticate at that point in time and reset the clock. That is the most clear-cut way to do that at this point in time.
Thank you. So there's another question here. Even if it's not supported, I've seen on the web that the MFA can work with Mac Mail. Todd, can you comment on this a little bit from a security perspective?
Eric might actually be able to speak more to that, but the supported application is Outlook, and there are some implications to data management and governance that would be impacted by using a non-supported email client.
Yeah, just to jump in here, if you find something that works for you, great, but we are supporting Office 365 and Outlook. So yeah, there might be others out there.
Okay, next question. When you're not authenticated, messages, emails, and other notifications will not be sent. Does this mean we won't be notified when our token expires? We've touched on that, but can you maybe just touch on it one more time, Todd, in case they missed that?
Yes. This and the previous question from Kathy. When you're not authenticated, your client will not receive the notifications. Your inbox will still receive mail. And you'll be prompted to log in again when your token expires. Your client will be trying to connect to the email service and retrieve messages, which should prompt a authentication request.
Sherry Collins asks, will this also be mentioned at town hall as parents also join, and this will affect incoming and current students? And students are looking at classes and schedules this week in my WSU to see where and when classes are. We don't set the agenda for the town hall, and they usually have a lot of challenges just meeting the agenda that they've set in the time frame that they have with the questions. So this is not on the agenda of the town hall. We have communicated out as much as we possibly can to every WSU email and all the different academic areas to share with their areas. I know there's a global campus student notification going out today. So we're trying to get this in front of people as much as possible with the channels we have access to. And if you see an opportunity to help us get that message out, we would take all the help we can get. So we'll keep communicating, we'll keep talking to people, and we'll keep putting it out there. And if there is an area where you see that there's a gap in communication, we're always open to talk with you and see how we can get that resolved. So. All right. Next question. How about emails we scheduled to send to an e-news list in advance from a main account? Does that main account need to be verified every 24 hours? Will those emails not send if it's not verified? Does this verification process apply to emails sent via MailChimp or similar services?
That's a multifaceted question. If the main account is actually a service account, it will not be requiring MFA. So if you're logging into a news feeder system and generating messages that will be outbound, it's very unlikely that MFA will apply. Certainly not for MailChimp, which is a good example of what I'm talking about. That is a service that doesn't use a client access method of sending mail. It actually generates the mail and sends it straight out. That's not an authenticated process right now. So no MFA would be required.
Thank you, Todd. The next question, when you're not authenticated, messages, emails, and other notifications will not be sent. Does this apply to out-of-office notifications?
Brian, you can keep me honest on this one, but I believe those are a server setting for your mailbox. So if you set your out-of-office notifications, that happens at Office 365, not on your client. So messages that hit your mailbox should auto-reply with your out-of-office notification, regardless of whether you're logged in or not.
That is a true statement.
Great. Thank you, guys. So the app on an iPhone is Okta Verify. Is that the same as Okta Push? That's a great question. So Todd, can you talk to that a little bit?
Yes. Yes, I can talk to it, and yes, it's the same thing. Our Okta Push reference in the documentation is actually referring to Okta Verify with its push capability.
And if you go to the its.wsu.edu/MFA page, we have that how-to video on Okta Push, and you'll see that it ties to the Verify and walks you through it. Very simple process. Can you please put the last slide back up so we can screenshot it? We'll be sharing the PowerPoint on the web page as well. So you can capture that. You can capture the video recording and share it, the document that Todd reviewed, and all the KB links that Corey's been sharing throughout the chat. So we'll have it all available to you. before implementation, probably by Monday morning if we can get it there, but shortly after. These changes apply to all Office 365, correct? So Teams, email, SharePoint, etc., are all subject to MFA.
That is correct.
Thank you. To the new restrictions. Why don't you do one MFA for all applications per day? Todd, can you talk to that a little bit?
That is essentially what we're doing, but those cannot cross devices. So you will only receive one MFA challenge per day across all applications, but that MFA token is coded for the device you're on when you generate it. So we kind of are doing what you're asking, except if you switch devices often during the day.
Okay, the next question, will our current MFAs carry over to this new system, or do we need to reestablish new factors at account.wsu.edu?
Your current MFA configurations will be utilized during after this change. No new factors need to be set up unless you want to heed the requests and warnings and admonitions that Jacqueline's been putting forward to have more than one.
Which is always a good idea. So I think there's some confusion there too. This isn't a new MFA system. It's just the same MFA that's applied to more applications. So rather than just only being requested for MyWSU, it's now requested on more than 90 applications across WSU, including Blackboard, Canvas, Office 365, and others. So if you have your MFA set up, which more than 50,000 users at WSU did when we rolled it out the first time, those factors would be what you would use for the new implementation on additional applications. Any issues with Office 2016?
No, that's compatible.
Okay. So we have an email here about the MFA requirement will make students less likely to open and receive important communications from the university, professors, Blackboard, etc. I think that comes down to a security need, that this isn't something that was taken into consideration lightly. We understand the ramifications of this on our university community. We also understand the ramifications of not putting this in place for our university community. And so it's a balancing act of protecting the individuals and the organization and still allowing the flow of learning and business to continue. So hopefully students will and have shown a tremendous acceptance for it. They were some of the first ones to onboard with the MyWSU. Very little pushback or concerns or struggle with it. And so we're hoping that this continues on through this phase and that they embrace it like they did with the initial rollout. Todd, would you have anything from a security standpoint to add to that?
Yeah, it's actually not from a security standpoint. From a pragmatic standpoint, if a student is already logged into Blackboard, Canvas, MyWSU, anything else, when they launch Outlook to check their WSU email, they're not going to get an MFA prompt. So there's a very good chance that depending on the order of any individual's operations for the day, that email may not be the trigger for MFA. That's certainly not a requirement. And if you've already MFA'd on a device, when you open email, it's going to be just like it always has been.
Thank you. So the next question is whether or not we need to log into each Office 365 product, or will one login apply? And I think Todd reviewed the document and it's posted on our ITS webpage. And so we'll point people to that afterwards. I would encourage you to review that. It's a great visual of when you'll be required to log in, and multi-factor authentication. It's more by device than by application, I would say. It's a good way to look at it. But that visual will help you. And you can find that at its.wsu.edu/MFA.
And Jacqueline, to answer their question directly, there is only one authentication required per day for all of Office 365 applications. So one login will apply, as they asked.
So the question that we have from Mark Weber, what about active shooter and other emergency alerts from WSU? Will they arrive or not?
Not via email. I would highly recommend that you sign up for WSU alerts using your phone and texting as well as email, so that you have multiple routes for that information to get to you.
And we have a question about where do we find information about the session for IT groups or others on call? So that hasn't been scheduled yet. I'll be doing that after this session today, and we'll be sending that information out through SIS managers. If you're not on the SIS managers listserv, you can email me at jsouthwick@wsu.edu and we can talk about that. So the next question is from Mark Weber again. Will MFA be used to check on employees' logging and work habits and privacy issues?
No, the MFA logs are not really useful for that kind of tracking. They are a one-time timestamp that says you applied this policy to your login, and it has no other interactivity with your work afterwards.
And that's not the intent. That's not the point of this at all. Will VPN access be influenced, Todd?
Not on the 4th. I am working with our network team right now to move VPN access to Okta, which will add MFA to the VPN access. That is a desire and a goal of network security as well. But that will not take effect without further announcements.
So we have a question from Vicki McCracken about non-students, non-faculty staff enrolled in non-credit classes that are offered through AOI, and also non-WSU people accessing Zoom set up by WSU employees. Can you talk to that a little bit, Todd?
Sure. Specifically, the Zoom invites that go to non-WSU entities will not require authentication to log in beyond knowing the Zoom meeting ID and a password if it's been set. Blackboard, I am not certain exactly how that's facilitated. If it's through a friend ID, they will be subject to MFA the same way that network IDs are.
Billy Schmuck has a question about a video for what hardware authentication looks like through the Outlook interface on mobile devices. And I don't believe we have a specific video set up for that yet, since the Outlook edition is so new and has been in testing for quite a while. So we certainly can get to that, and we'll try to do that as soon as possible. If it's possible to get that in place before implementation, we'll do everything we can to be sure we offer it. Will you share the evaluation cost benefit data on picking 24 hours? Actually, until 2 days ago, it was 10 hours. That would make all understand the reasoning.
That's been a fairly high level discussion at the CIO and the president of the university's level. The project team has offered advice to the CIO, but that is a decision that was made at that level.
Thank you, Todd. Michael Case is asking about Okta Push versus Okta Verify. Okta Push is using the Okta Verify, and they don't see an Okta Push app in the Apple Store. That's because it's the Okta Verify. Is it the same name in the Apple Store, Todd? Is it called
We
Okta
probably should update our documentation. The application is called Okta Verify. Push is the action.
the function? So how do I make Verify my default MFA tool rather than text?
The next time you're prompted for MFA, there is a big circle in the middle of the MFA challenge that shows you the current method of multi-factor authentication. To the 3 o'clock right position of that circle is a pop-down menu, and you can select a different factor. That will persist after that point in time as your default. Every time you choose one, it becomes your default.
And the next question pertains to the replacement for CougSync. Will that student engagement system be rolled into this MFA as well? Have you been approached for that, Todd, or have they not come to you yet? I don't even know the name of the new application that is replacing CougSync as a student engagement tool.
It depends on what the student's status is when they're interacting with the engagement tool. If they are accepted but not matriculated, and this is delving into some deeper technical issues, MFA is actually exempted for all students until they are matriculated. So if they've been accepted and they're going through a engagement system prior to matriculating or being enrolled in classes, there is no MFA requirement. We're trying to not put up barriers for people to onboard, basically.
Evis has a question about when your token expires. She wants to confirm that she'll be kicked out of the application that she's in. Is she understanding that correctly?
That is a very good question. Most applications honor their session token until your session ends, not when your token expires. So your session will begin based on your initial authentication. We've tested this with a couple applications so far, and what you're assuming is right is the case, that you're not kicked out of the application until you close the session yourself. But your mileage may vary depending on the application.
So some may check more often and you may get bumped.
Yes, if an application is very security conscious, they will check back with your token often during your session and dump you out as soon as it expires. Most applications don't do that.
We have a great question from the Tri-Cities campus. Does this also affect resources on their campus, and have the other campuses' IT departments been included in these decisions?
If you're using your network ID, regardless of your location or campus or being at home, this is tied to that account, not your location. So yes, it will impact any access to WSU resources that are using Okta for authentication, regardless of your situation.
Thank you. We have questions again about resources in this presentation. Everything will be posted that we can share, including the PowerPoint. Any questions that we may not get to that are critical to share, and the links that Corey has been posting in the chat. We'll be putting all of those on its.wsu.edu/MFA as soon as we possibly can. We have a question. Can you please clarify the implications of using multiple devices? As you have said, 2 different answers. When I switch from one device to another, am I forced to re-authenticate, or is the token on a specific device valid for a period of time regardless of the other devices I'm using?
The token generated on any given device is for that device only. Hopefully I have not said anything that would sound confusing, but if you switch devices, you will require a new MFA in any given 24-hour period.
Vincent asks, is there a dashboard where we can check which devices we currently have MFA active and maybe a countdown of time left?
Working on that. As of today, no.
Okay. So more to come. Next question, will Linux users have any support other than the web client?
Do I assume that to be an email question?
There is no app other than the web client for Linux at this particular time.
For email.
Correct.
There's a question, was there a test group to flesh out these changes? Has this been tested on a wide array of WSU accounts prior to rolling this out for all of WSU? Todd, do you want to talk a little bit about all of the testing that your team has done to ensure that this fits into the life of WSU?
Sure. We did a lot of our testing at 10 hours because that had been a standard that was proposed early on. The 24-hour period should be a little more friendly, particularly if you are bound to a specific schedule. The testing we're doing right now is based on some suggestions that we have gleaned from recent discussions that, which is the reason we're doing these forums as well. But yes, we've tested all sorts of different types of accounts. I will tell you that Okta does not have the same differentiation that Active Directory has for differentiating a friend ID from a network ID. We are exempting most service accounts that check mailboxes because they don't have an interactive nature to them, and there's not somebody actually checking those mailboxes. There's a system behind the scenes doing so. So we've tried to flesh out all the different scenarios that we can imagine and make policy decisions based on that.
Thank you, Todd. So there's another question about a specific application, Adobe Cloud, whether or not it's affected. And Corey put a link into the page to show all of the applications that are affected by this. And so you can go and check. There's a variety of department specific and university-wide applications. So if you aren't sure if there are specific applications within your academic or business area and you want to make sure that you have the best information, talk with your local IT support. They would have had to work with the security team in order to have multi-factor authentication on those applications. So they should be able to tell you what applications you can expect to see that on Tuesday night. There's a question about funding for low-income students with a device they can use for MFA if they don't currently have one. That's a great question. I would point you to the provost's office. I don't know if that's been a discussion, but I know we have hotspot program that was introduced with the COVID and remote learning, and we also have the loaner laptop program. So both of those have been worked through, created, and pushed out very quickly. And so if there's a need and the provost sees that, I think that we will see something that addresses that. But from an ITS perspective at this point, that's not something that we have broached quite yet. There's a question, I received my code via text message. Is there an alternative method to receive the code when I travel outside of the country?
Okta does support international texting. If you're in a country that doesn't allow texts, the best option would be to use a USB security key because that is local to your device at the moment.
Okay. I'm trying to kind of get through these. So if I skip your question, just I've heard responses. So hopefully you caught the response also. Again, we'll post these on our website. So the next question that I'm seeing, can Okta verify beyond more than one device, i.e. iPhone and iPad, or do I have to pick between devices?
Okta Verify requires that you use one device, and there's no facility for it to allow you to register multiple devices. In fact, that's true for all of them except for the USB security key. That can have multiple devices associated with your account.
Okay, thank you, Todd. Skimming down. So one of the assumptions on that diagram is that a desktop is on WSU network. If you're not on a WSU network, we have to have VPN running. Is that correct?
That is a varied by situation answer. Some applications on campus and servers on campus do require you to be on the VPN to access them. Others do not. Those are typically cloud applications. So that will vary with your situation. The diagram with the desktop did not assume you were on a campus network, because the verify or the MFA does not distinguish either way.
So also from an app perspective on that, no, you wouldn't have to be connected to VPN. You can still access email as long as you have a network connection. It doesn't have to be VPN'd in.
Thank you, Eric and Todd. So I see in the chat that people pointed out the name of this new student engagement tool is Presence, for anybody that wasn't sure. I have a question about, if I don't verify until 9 a.m. one day, I can't verify until 9 a.m. the next day unless I contact Crimson Service Desk and request an early reset. Is that the correct process, Todd?
As of today, or August 4th, yes, that is the correct process.
Okay.
I am working on an alternative method to manually and self-service reset your MFA token, but that is still in development.
Is there a test VPN login so I can verify my Linux desktop prior to the changeover?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
That would be a network engineering question. We don't have them represented on this panel.
Okay. So,
And I should clarify, the current vpn.wsu.edu does not require MFA or Okta verification at all. So those are still using our previous and legacy and existing authentication system, which is just your network ID and password.
great. Thank you, Todd. Kind of catching up here with the emails. There's quite a few left. I see about 90 that we haven't hit. So I really anticipate we're not going to get to all of them. Some of them are repetitive, and hopefully you've gotten an answer to them. If not, we will be going through these and trying to post information for users. I see a question here. Can you please clarify the implications of using multiple devices, as you've said? Oh, no, we read that one. Sorry, thought it was a new one. So we will be posting the video, the PowerPoint, all of the KB resources and links on its.wsu.edu/MFA. And so you can check that over the next couple days. Okay, I think I found my spot again. Have you tested Zoom class sessions to make sure students aren't kicked out? Can you touch on that just a little bit more, Todd? You mentioned it early on, but that would
Yes,
be a fun revisit.
We've created a Zoom meeting that I was attending, and while in the meeting, I forcibly canceled all of my session tokens. And I was left in the Zoom meeting until I exited. And the next time I tried to launch Zoom, I was prompted for credentials. So your session will not be impacted negatively by your token expiration.
I use TeamViewer to access an experiment on campus, VPN in operation. Will this be influenced?
There's a lot of variables to answer that question. If the experiment doesn't require Okta authentication, TeamViewer does not either, so this should not be influenced at this point in time.
Well, I think actually I've scanned through these. I thought there were more, but it looks like we're caught up. Eric Ostrom asks about the drift, as he called it, where you start on Monday morning at 9 and every day it's a little bit later. Is there anything that you would recommend or suggest on the time frame with authentication, Todd?
Unfortunately, that's a factor that we have considered. There were early discussions about MFA being 21 hours, 25 hours, 23 hours, and all of those discussions ended up in the same place. We're going to experience drift if we do anything but 24 hours. And like you're mentioning, Eric, 24 hours will still probably have a user-inflicted drift. I think the best answer is to reset it. And the best answer today is to have Crimson Service Desk reset your token on a regular basis to get yourself back into a cadence that is comfortable for you so that you're only being challenged during work hours. I will be working on a self-service tool that will allow you to forcibly re-authenticate at any point in time, which will reset your 24-hour period then. So stay tuned. That should be an announcement forthcoming in the next couple weeks.
And the next comment after that is, there's going to be an increased demand on Crimson Service Desk. And I think that what we're hoping is, as people get into this and you see your schedule and your needs, that you're able to get into a routine of how to manage that independent of Crimson Service Desk's team, because that is going to be a burden on them. They're prepared for it, but we want to ensure that individual users can manage as much as possible with their own schedule and at their own pace. So it may mean, if you know that your token is expiring at 10 a.m., you may just hold off and either not access those resources or take a break or just go without re-authenticating for a little while, and you can reset that to where you wait until 12 o'clock. And so you have that, that's your normal lunchtime. So for a period of time, you'll have that to work for you. So it's a matter of sort of getting into sync with figuring out your schedule and how this all works for you. I think the last question that we have is, how does an expired token impact using breakout rooms in Zoom? We have a number of users that utilize these regularly. Todd, you have information?
I don't know about the underpinnings of the breakout rooms, but I'm assuming they're covered by the same session that you're in to be in the Zoom meeting to begin with. It's just, it should not have an impact at all.
Great. All right, well, I think we've gotten through everything. I don't see any additional questions coming in. So I just want to thank everybody for taking the time to visit with us. These are all great questions. We're excited to see the increased protections for our student community as we move forward through these changes, and for our faculty and staff, and for WSU as a whole. It benefits from this, these new protections. And we know that it's a change, and we appreciate people's flexibility. Our Crimson Service Desk team is available for assistance. We have the meeting invitation will go out later today for the technical and on-call staff for more information early next week. We'll post information as soon as we can get it all together. There's a lot here, so bear with us. And if you had a question and didn't post it, feel free to send it in to us, and we'll see if we can get you a response as soon as possible. So thanks so much for attending, and have a great Friday. Have a great weekend, and go Cougs.